So let me start off my first question to you, and it's kind of an interesting one, Aayushi. You started off with collaboration, and I truly think that collaboration is something that sort of sits in the center of sustainability, the entrepreneurship as a whole. But then again, not all entrepreneurs are alike. There are a lot of these people who really want to sort of get something done by themselves. And this is, in certain sense, the individual ego, as what Sixit talked about, that comes in, right? And again, if you look from a sustainability perspective, it requires an entire collaboration across intellectuals, assets, finances, and a lot of other things. So where do you think, it's not really just to you, Aayushi, but it's across to the other two entrepreneurs as well, where do you think, or how do you sustain or retain your purpose of entrepreneurship in an ecosystem where everybody is collaborating for the higher value?
That's a very interesting thought. Well, when I started KCC, I figured that we're not just starting a company, we're starting an industry. Waste industry is not a new industry. It's a very mature industry which has been in place for more than 5 decades now. But we don't have a waste management industry. And that was the revolution, if you may call that we wanted to explore and build in Nepal. So in that process, I work with waste entrepreneurs. They are entrepreneurs in their own sense. There are about 10 to 13,000 of them just in Kathmandu, and that's a huge number for a small city like Kathmandu. And yet, 70% of the trash that ends up in the landfill is the kind of trash that these entrepreneurs could have easily collected. Not just collected, bought. So the math simply did not work there. And that is why KCC.com as a digital platform started. So in Nepal, it all comes down to culture and problem. The culture of working with such KCC friends is not new. Right? And so we wanted to capitalize on that. And in Nepal, waste management starts with these guys. Had there not been these group of entrepreneurs, whatever little is being mobilized would not have been possible because we do not have it in our culture, we do not have it in our infrastructure, centers like recycling centers where we can go and drop off our things. So you cannot, entrepreneurship cannot exist in a single, in solidarity, that's what I say. And that is what started KCC and which is what we're trying to still look at. So the idea is not to replace these group of entrepreneurs. It has always been to include them in this digital transformation.
Sure. Well, you could choose to answer this question, or probably you can take it over. Let's imagine a hypothetical case, right? And you are also in the center of sustainability. I mean, as what he talked about, the works that you're doing is really relevant for climate change. So let's imagine someone like Siddhant or Business Oxygen comes along with a huge capital investment, which essentially could change the landscape of the work that you're doing. But this might call in for a lot of collaboration, and which might ask you as an entrepreneur to join the bandwagon. Would you lose the artistic sense? Would you lose the artistic sense, Sixit, in such a case? Or for that matter, let's say, I can't build a real case here, but let's imagine you have a bigger version of Toodle come over, and they sort of kind of come into a situation where you need to kind of jump in. There is a chance that you might lose things, right? Would you, in this particular case, step back and continue to take the journey all by yourself, which is maintaining your artistic expression, or would you like to jump in and work for the greater cause and collaborate, which was our first round of discussion?
You're firing in really tough questions, Zaffar.
Because you've got a long way to go, right? Let's start with that.
The question is not about the artistic expressions or investment. I think, a lot of entrepreneurship is also to do with leadership. Leadership because, and I was speaking to my team yesterday, And I told them that this is not my company. This is not even your company. With the kind of traction that we've seen and being able to enable mobility for so many people, the company actually belongs to people, right? And our growth is a reflection of the faith that our users provided to us. So that is why impact funds are different to venture capitalists, isn't it? So when we position ourselves as Toodle as an impact-driven entrepreneurship, we would have partnerships with people who are playing in the impact space, not in the venture capitalist state. So that is the reason our collaboration is going to be more natural with people who see the world or who would wish to see the world the same way as we see, rather than someone who is different. And when our values and vision align for the future, there is no reason why we cannot still be artistic and at the same time grow at a rapid pace. That's what impact investment is all about, I guess.
Sure. So you still stick to the idea that you would be collaborative.
Of course, I mean, everyone has to.
Yeah, and so in some sense, sort of, like as what he said, you don't want, well, you do understand the concept of driver and the business model. You want to make sure the business model is sustainable, and you rather would kind of take a step back,
yeah.
right? But then, wouldn't that sort of contradict to what you said, Siddhant? I mean, that investors at the end of the day are drawn by where is the money, right? So don't you see, just to add to that, I want to add another part of it. Amit talked about, much later towards his presentation, there was a concept, well, there was a little leadership idea of being compassionate. And I think that's very important, to have a deep sense of empathy when you become an entrepreneur, because when you're in that system, you really need to understand the real problem. That set of leadership, kind of getting into a wedlock with investors who are really driven by the capital or the money as in you get back. What sort of relationships have you had with a lot of these people that come along and you've kind of injected money into? Can you kind of throw a little light in terms of the relationships that is it SAR, is it the lovey-dovey ones? Or I think a lot of people here from budding entrepreneurs would want to know that it's just not about the money, but it's also about not just performance, but it's also about the long-term relationship that you have set for next, I don't know, X 10 years.
Okay, let me go back to your first question.
Sure.
About, when an investor and an investee meet, they already have the pitch sort of dictates, sort of delineates the process of where this investment is going to go to. Let me be clear. There is the social impact funds, and there's the commercial funds. And Business Oxygen is a finance-first model. We invest in the balance sheet of the companies. However, because we are operating in countries like Nepal, we have an impact. We have a composition of a blended finance in it. That means that any investment that you make will have an impact, but that impact should not be a byproduct, but it has to be an intentionality. Okay? The investment should go towards a certain sort of impact resultant at the end. Now, question here is when a pitch comes, you make sure that, of course, tomorrow, as an investor, as a private equity fund, I am going to want to see how the internal rate of return of my investment is going to be. Okay? Yes, the social values might be incredible. It may be fourfolds. And this is, you're right, it's a fantastic question because we have three different investors. Okay? We have IFC of the World Bank Group, which is the private sector arm of the World Bank, which is more towards development, but more towards the returns in profit. We've got DFID, which is more interested on the social side of it. And then we have the Strategic Climate Fund, which is invested in us. And they want to see whether the investment is climate smart. So you can just imagine we are trying to juggle three different kinds of investors. But our focus is, number one, it has to be profitable. Now, the question tomorrow is if an investor thinks that, is whether he will be if a buyer, a strategic buyer comes out and says, all right, I'm going to give you 10 times your multiple, but you will have to relinquish your baby, would you do it or not? As an investor, the first meeting I do is that I will have a tag-along right. That is, if an investor comes and he wants to give you 10 times the multiple, thank you very much. See, that is unfortunately how the world moves. and you know, and tomorrow, the reason behind this is, yes, my impact stories might be fantastic. I might make front page headlines with how good socially I'm doing, but that's not going to make me able to raise another bigger fund because I'm a nice guy. They're going to see what my internal rate of return of my fund is. And to enable that, I need to see my investee companies produce. I hope I've been
sure.
able to.
In some ways, you do agree that there is a contradiction. For example, let's take an example of Toodle. As much as you would like to claim that it's a highly, in some ways, it's an impact-driven. He brought in hashtag climate change. He also brought in the concept of sustainability with the entire hockey stick growth curve that you talked about. But would you agree that when you have a fund like this and you the chairman or you the CEO, and I'm asking this from a context of a lot of big entrepreneurs here who may want to come and knock your doors tomorrow. So what is the mindset, or what is the kind of attitude should they have in? I mean, I do understand that idea is not all enough, but is there a place for an amazing idea? Okay, it's not a scale up, it's just an amazing idea, but thinks that here is a place someone's going to listen to me.
There is leeway there. I mean, if we can see that the future cash flow of the company can be very positive, and the only thing that's lacking in this idea from being profitable is capital, then of course, and if it has a social side to it, it has impactful, then we will compromise. We may compromise a little bit, but then, again, that all depends on the structure of the fund that is in place.
Yeah.
Now, I'm talking about my fund, sure. And we, as I said, we are a finance-first model. So it is important that profitability in alignment with the social impact, the environmental impact. I mean, our intervention, especially on the sustainability, is teaching the companies how to be climate adaptable, how to be climate smart, etc., and so on and so forth. But there's a cost to that. But working in countries like Nepal, there is a technical assistantship fund that goes not from the balance sheet of the company, but from a separate modality.
Sure.
So, this is to actually penetrate markets like this so that tomorrow it becomes mature and it will be able to attract investors from Goldman Sachs, Deutsche Bank, etc.
Sure. I'll come to a question later, but so Amit, I think, was it you, Sixit? You talked about the combination of people, product, and a platform. You being in a tech, in the midst of tech, do you feel that staying in Nepal or having a company in Nepal with some of the products like Pico, right? Do you think that somewhere of the three, somewhere you do lack, the weight of a platform? Well, I mean, let me give you a context here, right? I mean, let's take an example of Prabal Gurung, right? I mean, he's an excellent fashion designer. Would you have expected, and this is for all of us here, would you have expected that he would have reached the same feat had he set up a design showroom here, come all the way back from US and set up a design showroom here, call some of his friends from Hollywood, etc., and ask for it? Would you, I believe, no, right? Or would you say, or are you going to be overly optimistic, like any other, and you would say yes?
Yeah, I'll say yes.
So he's saying yes. What about the rest of you? What would you say? Would you expect Prabal Gurung to reach the same feats if he were to come back here in Nepal right after his college, after having worked in Hollywood or US for some time? Would you think that you would have achieved success at the same rate as he has done now? Yes or no? Well, that's one side of the story, tech. from tech perspective, do you really feel that you really need, for example, a Pico or any other, like you have Culti, do you think that a product like this, or you have another amazing product which has not been launched yet, do you think you really need to sit in the epicenter or mecca of tech like Silicon Valley? Or would you say something else? Or do you have another approach of looking at things?
Well, for me, the place where we are based is not the only factor. It may be one of the factors, but in today's world, especially in tech, it might not be a huge factor. Yes, you need good team, you need good talent, you need money, you need that ecosystem, that's for sure. However, in our case, for example, for a product like Pico, we never market it in Nepal or India. Our target is fully US and Europe. For products like that, maybe yes, you need to go out. You need to understand the habits of people to whom you are selling. That is most important. Right? Okay. If I don't know their purchasing power, if I don't know their lifestyle, I can't sell them anything. To understand that, you need to go out. But in today's world, you can have a headquarter in Nepal as well, but your sales team, your production team can be in Nepal, your sales team has to be in US. Now coming back for a product like Khalti, first we want to target people in Nepal. Yes, definitely we need to know about the latest technology in this industry. Where is it going? Like maybe future is in, like currently if you are going for scan and pay, future might be tap and pay. Or maybe we want to go into blockchain. You need to be updated, and for that, yes, traveling helps a lot, or like being in Silicon Valley helps a lot. But that's not the only requirement. You have to be based amongst the people who are going to use your product. Because the most important thing is, you might assume that you are making their lives easier, but you might not be providing a seamless experience to them. So we firmly believe in human-centric design, and for that, you need to earn that trust and credibility. And I think for that, yes, you have to be based in Nepal. In case of Prabal Gurung's example that you told, my personal opinion is he might not have achieved the success or the visibility that he has today had he come to Nepal right after his graduation. But today, the world has changed. Today, he can have a different, different blend to it. If he has something in Nepal, that will add a different flavor to his designs, maybe more organic and more natural, and because people want to find new things. Maybe he can add a better impact element to it, at the same time a better, it's all about branding. See, we can drink a drink which is 50% sugar and a carbonated drink, but we are not able to sell the pure water from our Himalayas, right? It's all about branding. So if you're able to do that, maybe the big scope.
So are you saying, just to sort of re-emphasize what you said, are you saying that it really depends, well, in the context of tech, you could, in the current world that we live in, we could still live in Nepal and get our message across or the product across to other parts because we have other ways to reach the people, right? Is that what you said?
Yes. So you need to have a team abroad as well, but it's not that your production team or your development team can be in Nepal, and you can build world-class products.
Sure.
Possible.
Sure. So I'll come back to Siddhant again. I'm sure you must be doing a lot of these events where you discuss about sustainability, etc. Let's imagine you do have, let's say, a project in hand, and you're bringing in all your weight to kind of bring in the financials, as the way you said it, marketing and branding, people, experts, etc., etc. I'm assuming that you do have cases where there are these opportunities for few more entrepreneurial ventures in order to tag along to reach the one that you're actually focusing on. In some cases like these, obviously a lot of people who are highly, well, they don't have a plan, they don't have a clarity of what they want to do, but these people are someone who has the ability to kind of get matters done. I'm focusing on team execution per se. Let's imagine I have a bunch of guys here, and you kind of rejected them for sheer of the business model. But you loved the people. You knew they had credibilities to prove. Their CVs were amazing. And your sixth sense told you that these are the guys who can do it. I mean, have you had cases where you would go back to these guys because there is few other ventures aligned, not perhaps something that they would wanted to do, but you thought that these are the guys, right guys for that? Or my next question is, if you don't do that, I mean, do you see that there is a possibility that people like you, Netherlands-based Rockstart Impact, and what was the other third one with Dolma Funds, of course. So do you see that a lot of synergy in a very different aspect altogether? Would you care to do something like that? So that, well, if you have a team of great players, they do have something to look at, if not the idea.
Well, let me tell you that, out of the three that you mentioned, Business Oxygen, Dolma Fund, and the Dutch-based One to Watch, I know Dolma and Business Oxygen are quite similar in the way they approach investments and investee companies. We do not do startups, basically. So, there has to have a enterprise value, has to have a track record, and a very good growth trajectory for us to even consider investing. But One to Watch has a Rockstart program where good ideas can be pitched, and they take them to individual investees, potential investors in the Netherlands. And if the investors are willing to invest, and I believe there have been cases where they have raised funds for various investments. But you've got to understand that, in markets like this, we are valuating the company. The company valuation is done in the form of discounted cash flow, right? So basically, you're looking at a company's future earnings in the next 10 years, and you're arriving at the value at present to invest in that. You create an enterprise value of that enterprise. So even if you say you're investing 49% in that company, you own 2,000% of it. The risk is yours, you see. So, I mean, it's very difficult to go and put all that money on the basis of whether I like the guy's face or his idea. He has to demonstrably show that he is capable to take that money and turn it around into profit. So in order for him or her to show that to me, there has to be a track record behind that demonstrates that, his business is viable to scale up.
Sure.
You see? So in markets like this, where the other problem is that you do not have market research, you have to do your own. There are no indicators or indices out there that you can look at a certain idea or put it in a certain industry and say, all right, this is the track record of that industry. So you're actually working on a very thin air here, you see. So we have to be extra cautious.
Sure.
The very fact that we're investing $500,000 or $1 million in an industry is in itself a huge risk. And private equity, venture cap in this market is a very new concept.
Sure.
And there are no legal recourses. Let's go back. So profiling the investor is a very important factor, and that's where majority of our rejections. For every 200 to 300 companies we go through, we invest in one or two. So you can imagine what the deal sourcing is like. The pipeline has to be robust at all times. The rejection rate is very high.
Sure. Do you well, just to kind of sum this up, well, I wouldn't be wrong if I said that, as you can already see within the panel, we got a different mindset altogether. So we have investors who are highly risk averse. So that's, as an entrepreneur, you got to be very careful of. And at the same time, you got to be very self-aware. There's an entrepreneur, there's a highly chance that you're going to be highly optimistic. So you got to put that balance together and be very aware of which grounds are you playing in, right? And I'll come back to you guys again. Siddhant, my final question to you before I hand over to the audience is, do you foresee in future chances of having private equity players or impact investors or VCs getting into this mode of being very being more attracted to specific industry segments. As what I understand right now, we don't have something like that here in Nepal. Like, for example, I think someone like Amit would like to kind of be more closer to someone who's really into tech space, right? Would you see like that? Or, as you said, the size of the volumes are really small here. This potentially may not bring that up in the near future.
No, there's a huge potential, especially hydro funds.
Okay.
It could happen. There's enormous interest in renewable energy as well. But, you know, our own government has to come up with policies to create an enabling environment for funds like ours. To explain a little bit, private equity concept alone, there's no regulatory regimen that regulates us here. So when we came, we had to be incorporated under the Companies Act. We act as a fund, but we operate as a private limited company.
Sure.
You see? So there are huge problems to this. Tomorrow at exit, we will be liable for taxation twice. You know, entry-level valuation is very complicated under the existing rules and regulations. Hence, what we're doing is now I am leading that group, which pretty much is lobbying the government for an alternative investment regulation, so that the regulator is under the Security Exchange Board of Nepal, so that we come under an umbrella like the banking is under the BAFIA, they call it, Financial Act.
Where is that?
BAFIA is the umbrella act that governs all the banking financials. Okay. So we want something like that for private equity here. But we've also told them we don't want another layer above what we already have to deal with. So, you know, it's still in its very nascent form. And Dolma Fund as well as One to Watch are offshore. We're the only onshore private equity FDI fund for Nepal. So you know, it is educating the government, the regulators, and also the entrepreneurs as we move along.
Sure. Thank you so much, Siddhant. So, you know, this is, I wouldn't know how interesting would that be for you, but there's a highly overrated or underrated thought that education isn't that important to become an entrepreneur or to solve a problem. But then during a course of discussion, I realized that some of them highlighted on the pricing models, business models, and again, Siddhant rightfully explained that, you know, you have tech guys, someone who could possibly learn how to code by looking at YouTube videos, extremely smart people, but then they lack the business acumen, the financial acumen, etc. How much do you think, three of you as entrepreneurs, do you think that this concept of, as an entrepreneur, you don't have to really go through your college or get a degree. Is that real truth because you've traveled that road, or is that a symbolic representation of some of our poster boys that we have globally in the context of Facebook guy and your Googles and Larry Page, so on and so forth? What has been your personal experience in this?
You know, the first thing is we need to, again, question the model of education. I think it starts from the questioning of the model of education itself. For example, our education model that we use is the industrial model of education. Started in UK, they were colonizing rapidly, the industry is growing up. So because of those reasons, the hierarchy of subjects were created in such a way that it could feed the industry or create administrative bureaucrats throughout the world to fuel their colonization process. And everything comes from the industry. The ringing of the bells actually comes from the industry. Getting students out of college in batches comes from the concept of assembly line. But what we need to understand here is that we've well passed the industrial age to an information age, which means the degree that we get has been inflated over a period of time. So when I passed my engineering in 2002, I didn't have a subject on mobile communication, not to that depth that you'd have now. Which means if I had scored a GPA of 4, I mean, that GPA would have inflated to being GPA of 0.25 right now. And if I were to appear for my engineering degree examination today, I would fail. Not only engineering, if most of us were to appear at SLC, which is now called SEE, I would rather bet that most of us would fail, isn't it? Because education that we have today teaches us to remember things, which is the most lowest part of the learning.
Sure.
Yeah, remembering. So we need to come into creativity. Now, what's happened over the years is that because of the information that we can access to, we need to be lifelong learners. And entrepreneurial journey in itself is a process of learning. You know, think about the kind of learnings that have been created by Facebook, the way we can advertise to people, the way we can communicate to the people. Look at the ways of learning. So these institutions, this entrepreneurial institution in itself, are the cradle of education today, unlike the conventional institutions of brick and mortar. So we need to not only rethink the model of entrepreneurship, we need to also rethink the model of education. Yeah. I will not be able to answer you that question in terms of education and is important or not. Degree is important. I think these questions are irrelevant at this point in time. What is relevant is learning, is questioning things, is creating things. And if you can do all these things, then you reduce that illusion of explanatory depth, because then you engage in doing your research and development. So I would say that learning is more important.
Sure, thanks. So we don't have really much of a time, so I would like to open the question for audience, guys. Any questions to any of our extreme panelists here? Call out your name. We would love to hear you. Yeah.
Hello everyone. I'm Hishila Tamrakar. I'm currently studying in KC. It is said, I open a question to all the speakers. It is said that entrepreneurs work 18 hours a day for themselves, so they won't have to work 8 hours a day for somebody else. How much do you agree about it?
So, thank you for the question. See, there is no fixed rule, and you can't generalize it, right? What type of work you are doing, that matters. If you're not doing any smart work, even if you work for 18 hours, you'll end nowhere, right? The more important thing is, what are you trying to do? What are you trying to create? What is the problem? What is your innovation? And where are you creating an impact? A lot of times, we don't want to get into those things. We don't want to do our research. We don't want to do our homework. We just want to follow the trend. We just want to, just because Bill Gates was dropout, doesn't mean that if we drop out, then we'll become entrepreneurs. You're getting me? It's not the other way around. So just by working 18 hours, you will not become an entrepreneur. And on the same note, if you are an entrepreneur, you need not always work 18 hours. It has to be the situation and demand of time, right? The only thing is, if something interests you, you are onto it, right? And maybe time doesn't matter. So if it comes within, you continue doing it. If not, just by replicating someone, just by showing off, that's not required. So we have to change that mindset. Thank you.
You know, this 18-8 rule, like you said, does not suffice. I wouldn't say I work 18 hours. I work more than 100 hours a day. Because it's not just me. Because when you have a team under you, you have a team with you that is working for the same vision, for the same, with the same passion. So when I have, let's say, a team of 10 people working 8 hours a day, we should do more than that, in fact. So it's like more than 80 hours, So like you said, about being productive versus about being busy. So don't get into that fad of 18 versus 8. Just think about the entire team and how much you contribute at the end of the day. Yeah.
Sure, that's an excellent question. I have a question, a rebut question onto a question. So it's kind of please don't judge me when I ask this question, okay? I mean, this is all for all three of you guys. What do you do besides the work part? What is something interesting you would like to talk about right here? So that they feel like you guys are one of us, yeah?
Yeah, we're more like, we're very much like them, you know. I'm going to a bar nearby after this.
So he's going to a bar right after this?
Right in Lajimpat, if you want to.
Okay.
So, I mean, see.
It's Friday.
Yeah, that's
right.
what. That's what. I've got a small correction on that note. I think it's not 18 hours; it's 24 hours, and it was said by Richard Branson. So, see, in Nepal, most of people claim that they're busy. If you ask for a meeting, they're busy, and people ask me, "How busy are you, Sixit?" And I said, "I'm never busy. I'm just occupied." You know, there's a difference between being busy and there's a difference being occupied, right? You say you're busy because you don't want to meet someone, but you're doing nothing basically. And I think if you look at people like us, entrepreneurs, you know, these people are not very special. We just get the limelight when things work your way. And we need to understand that in some ways we've become extremely blessed and lucky. Extremely. Whether it's Prabal Gurung or Amit or me or Aayushi or Steve Jobs for that matter. Don't you think there were hundreds of thousands of people like Steve Jobs or Bill Gates who never showed up for that pitch? We human beings, we only have this retrospective bias of knowing things after the event happened. You know, a non-event is never known. For example, and this is a little bit into a philosophical tangent.
We're running out of time, so
Yeah.
we'll have to.
So, you know, we're not special, we're just lucky. Yeah. You know the highs of being an entrepreneur, but you don't know the lows. So, you know, just work hard, and one day you get lucky, that's it. If you're unlucky, that's it. If you're lucky, you're there, that's it.
That's quite philosophical, but maybe we'll take one last question, okay? So while we have someone, so Aayushi, what's something interesting that you'd like to share with the folks here? And the intent is really to understand, you know, just to make them feel that, well, entrepreneurship one side aside, you're still just any other ordinary person with a stronger conviction into something that you do. Or you could tell us what you're listening to lately. Any soundtracks?
I'm listening to a lot of Bhojpuri songs.
So Bhojpuri songs for you guys.
Because I work with Khalisisi friends,
Sure.
and they're
Now-
at the office.
Now, that doesn't
They're
mean that in order to be an entrepreneur, you got to listen to Bhojpuri songs. I think that's exactly what he meant.
But,
right?
but
So
it's
just to
real
connect.
fun. It's real fun. It's really catchy, you know. It helps you release the
And-
hormones that you said.
Yeah, I'm a moderator, but I'm not supposed to add in my stuff as much. But just to let you know that I think as entrepreneurs, you got to be in the center of that system that you're trying to do. So in her particular case, she is a lot with the Tarai people. That's that my understanding?
Yeah, it is.
Of course. So Bhojpuri, I don't want to call out that name, the song that everybody knows. So yeah, so that happens. And nothing to be surprised of, right?
It's not a conscious effort. It's an organic, you know, natural
Exactly.
process.
Exactly.
My question is to Mr. Sixit Bhatta. I had read in the news once that you had some regulatory issues about the taxes, I think, with the scooties, personal vehicles that the people are using for your service. So have you avoided that? Have you circumspected around it?
Yeah, I got your question because
Yeah.
that's what everyone asks me. The media people. I don't mind the media people asking me that question, but I really get sad when students ask me that question. Because if I were a seller of an alcohol right now, standing in front of you, you would not have asked this question to me, right? If I was selling cigarettes or producing cigarettes, you would not have asked this question, would you? You're asking me this question because I choose to disrupt something.
No. I'm not getting personal.
Hold on. No. It's not that.
Okay, one second.
No.
Yeah? You have a rebut?
Yeah, I'm not getting personal at
No.
all. This is just just a mild question,
No.
not personal at all.
No, why I'm sad, I'll tell you. I've not completed. I'm not trying to get into a debate with you. The sadness is that as students, we need to understand the global trend as to innovation drives policy changes. Internet was available in the 80s, but it was only the Gore's bill that came in the early 90s that enabled internet to be used by everyone, isn't it? The drug for cancer would be tested first, and only then it will be approved by the FDA. And if you look at the global innovation and the way things would go in the world, we'll have a self-driving car in the streets of Kathmandu in 10 years, but do we have the policies right now? We don't. So entrepreneurship, and this is a model of entrepreneurship, and this is the kind of an optimism that we need to have as youngsters, as students, into if there is an existing policy out there, then no longer it's an entrepreneurship. Now, if I were to again debate on the uses of private vehicles, I mean, there's so many rental car companies that rent the private vehicles, isn't it? But this is not the right argument. The right argument is what change you're making. And
Sure.
that is the process of change.
No,
right?
I see your point, and I understand where you're coming from. But what I meant to ask was, did you find a way to deal with the government? Because I'm also with you on your side, actually, when I'm asking this question. Because I'm going to be a future entrepreneur as well, and I'm going to face these issues as well, right? So how did you deal with the policy issues that you faced?
The first thing is the inexistence of policy does not make anything illegal or legal, right? So till you're proven guilty, you're always innocent. And that's the commons law, and that's the gift of commons law that we have throughout the world, which means that you can always operate in that area. And once you become a sizable startup, where you can drive changes into people's life, then I'm sure automatically these things will fall in place. So whatever you're doing right now, just continue to do so, continue to grow. Don't let your mind be clouded by things that are not available right now. Because if you cloud your mind, you'd no longer pursue your dream or your passion or your startup. Don't let anything cloud your mind. There will be hundreds of people who would ask you the same question that you asked me. Don't listen to them. Just follow your path and just move on. Right ahead.
Thank you so much.
Okay, thanks so much for all of you. I think we started the NMS lab yesterday with the financial discussions of financials. Then we moved on to marketing and branding. Up early today, we started with leadership and management. And what a great way to end this entire NMS program with discussions on collaboration, sustainability, the artistic expression. I will still continue to add that because that was one of it. And then, of course, kind of building in something that's in the center of almost all our innovations, the tech. So thank you so much, all of you guys, Aayushi, Sixit, Siddhant, and of course, Amit. With that, we end the NMS.